Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org. Consequence and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here for checking out the episode. I do hope you hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with the entire series. I do 3 brand new interviews every single week, new and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover some new ones. You can grab us at Spotify, Apple Podcast, NPR, WFPK.org, Consequence, or of course right here on YouTube for the video versions. Really, anywhere you get your podcast from, you can subscribe to Kyle Meredith with. That's me, Kyle Meredith, today talking with Maya Hawke. It's always great to catch up with Maya. In fact, we're going to be doing it twice. There's going to be an interview later this month because she's got a new record, Chaos Angel, coming out May 31st. That interview will come later. But this time we get to talk about one of her latest movies, Wildcat. It's sort of a biopic about Flannery O'Connor, and she plays Flannery, but it's also a showcase of some of her short stories. Ethan Hawke, her dad, directs, and it also co-stars Laura Linney, Steve Zahn, among others. We get to talk all about this, how being inspired by reading Flannery back when she was in high school really left a lasting impression, to passing along some prayer journals to Ethan and then eventually deciding to make this movie. We get to talk about the big topics that the movie tackles, including racism and white hypocrisy, among many other things. We're also going to hear about the connection to songwriting that stories like this have, all that and more. It is a wonderful, beautiful movie, and I'm so excited to talk about it. So let's jump into it. We're discussing Wildcats. It's Kyle Meredith with Maya Hawke.
And then, yeah. Oh, hi.
Surprise.
How are you? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. How you doing?
As good as ever.
So here we are. Wildcat is finally out. And
yeah,
what a fantastic, I mean, seriously, this has been in my world, of course, for as long, not as long as it's been in your world, but almost, because you shot it here in Kentucky, and we've been talking about it a little bit, but I finally got to watch it. And I don't even know what my expectations were, but it is so good. The last time you and I talked, you said, I think what you said was, I don't know if you'll like it, but you'll have fun talking about it. And I want to say how much I love it first. So let's just
good.
start there.
Well, that's a huge win. I feel like the people liking things is not as important as them being interested in things, but I still like it when people like stuff. Yeah. It's still good.
So let's just start at the easy place. What is the journey to this movie?
Journey to this movie is her book of short stories was assigned in my English class in the 10th grade. And I wanted to do a little extracurricular reading. So I got her prayer journal. And then my dad was shooting this movie, Magnificent Seven, over the summer. And I was visiting him, and I'd kind of gotten really obsessed with the prayer journal and was really moved by it. And I know my dad is a closet Christian. And all I mean by that is that he's in no way an overt practicing religious person. Like, we didn't go to church every Sunday or anything like that, but his family is very religious. And he, I think, has often sort of combined different sort of Eastern and more spiritual teachings with kind of imagery and mythology from Christianity, because it's so deep in his roots, and it's been a kind of guiding light for him. And so I thought that, I was this young, ambitious girl and found this kind of commonality between Flannery and I, and she was struggling with her faith and her faith's relationship to the arts. And so I thought it would be a good ground for us to meet on. So we read it together and then ended up editing it together into my Juilliard audition monologue. And then I just kind of got it in my head that I wanted to play this part. So I tried to hunt down the rights for a couple years and didn't get anywhere. And then I just started talking in the press about how I wanted to find the rights, thinking that maybe, that would be the way to get the message to whoever had them, if I couldn't get them in the normal ways. And so it worked. And then he reached out, this guy named Joe Goodman, and he not only had the rights to her prayer journal, but to all of her letters and all her short stories, barring 2. And so we, got to work on trying to make this happen. And kind of simultaneously, while that was going on, my dad was having a moment of kind of spiritual crisis, of feeling like in his early 20s, he'd done a lot of work developing his spiritual life and then had kind of left it there and not worked on it any further. But then he had this epiphany that actually the way that he practiced his faith was through making art, that was its own kind of practice and routine and connection to something larger than yourself. And so we kind of decided that we wanted to make a movie about that through the guise of Flannery's life and words and letters. And so I asked him if he would consider writing that script and working with Joe and the team to do a part for me that would be kind of a poem about faith through art. And then it weirdly just kind of everything kept going right with it, to the point to which it happened. I think we'd had a couple other projects we wanted to do together that everything was going wrong with, that we thought were a slam dunk. And then this one we were like, well, no one's going to want to make this, but we'll try. And it happened. Sorry for that. I feel like I just talked for 5 minutes.
You actually, I will always admit to being slow to the finish line about my own brain a lot of times. And, I'm telling you how much I like the movie because because I learned a lot about Flannery. I didn't know much. I haven't read Flannery. But I was an altar boy up until I was about 12 or 13 and stopped going. I left Catholic church altogether and never looked back. And here I am in Kentucky, which is not exactly the South, but it's close. It's the gateway to the South. And suddenly I realized, because the stories that you are telling through Flannery and her stories about religion, about the South, like these are the conversations that I'm still having with my family.
Yeah.
Sometimes some very racist moments, surrounding us around here, and just that style of, not just the racism, but the religion and everything, that style of thinking that still holds true. Like you're still telling a very present day story.
Well, I think that that's exactly what we ended up deciding. We had a big, for lack of a better term, come to Jesus conversation about Flannery's racism, but also her writing about white hypocrisy and how those things were so complicated and convoluted. And in many ways, she wrote better about white racism than almost any white writer has, but she also, maybe part of the reason why she has that perspective on it is because she was so stewed in it and grown up in it. But, this history of America, if you try to tell it or talk about any of our past and whitewash out the racism, you're lying and, telling a fictitious tale of an imaginary country. And, it seems like in some ways there's only two sides of this opinion right now, one of which is we have to hold on to our pride, keep our statues, people who drive around with the Confederate flag on their cars, and people who are like, all of that has to be annihilated. We've got to take Flannery's name off of buildings, and that we can't talk about any of that anymore. And it feels like the right path. I mean, not that people don't have this idea. There is this third contingent, which is like, we need to study our history, take what was valuable from it, try to use the mistakes of the past to correct for the future, and acknowledge, and if we can't make a movie about Flannery or be in conversation with Flannery in a modern way, what are we all supposed to do as white Americans with any of our grandparents or ourselves for that matter,
Right. And it's like the way you all did it, because as people will see, this isn't your standard biopic by any means. I mean, we do get a snapshot of this one moment of her life, where she is falling ill and she's coming back home, but you tell it through all of these short stories of hers that are weaved in and out, with you playing, and Laura Linney, every time, you're playing these multiple. When you're playing those characters, how important was it to have Flannery's DNA, or was it at all?
Really important. I mean, I think, one thing we were trying to avoid was the SNL sketch vibe, where it felt like, and now you're going to watch Maya and Laura act. We didn't want it to feel like that. We really wanted the aspect of it that's a personal portrait is trying to dramatize the creative experience. and trying to kind of show in some visual way what it feels like to have an idea for a story or a song or whatever it is, that she could see the hat on the train and let her mind go wild and develop a whole story based around that hat and that billboard, just those two details built a whole story for her and her world. And so I think that is the poetic portrait aspect of it. But yeah, I wanted the way that you are in a dream was my goal. How you can recognize yourself in a dream, and sometimes you're somebody else. You're like, whoa, I'm me, but I'm actually my mother in this moment in this dream, or what, I'm actually my neighbor, or I think I'm me. I can't really control what's happening, but I kind of know I'm dreaming. Um, that sort of feeling of dream state creativity is what we were looking for. And we wanted to feel both the character of Regina and the character of Flannery blurring, not the actors transforming, the characters blurring into these other people.
Beautifully surreal. It was all the way through it. And those, what was, there was a quote, I think one of you all said, your dad, in another interview, fiction is plunging into reality.
It's a Flannery quote. I think it opens the movie.
Oh, that's what I get for not notating my own notes there.
No, it's all right. Yeah, fiction is not an escape from reality, but rather a plunge into reality. And yeah, I think that's kind of another aspect of the thesis, which is that we tell stories not as a dilettantish fun activity. You tell stories to save your life. We make stories of our life so that we can survive it. And some of us make up crazy stories about the things that aren't even in our lives so that we can survive our lives, but that it's a necessity in order to participate in reality, not an escape from it.
Yeah. As far as the way we treat writers too, and beyond what you were saying earlier about, problematic moments of their past, but like the way we romanticize them, writers in the 50s, writers of any decade, I think we romanticize them. But it's interesting because, looking at this moment in Flannery's life, I'm sure she wasn't feeling romantic at all.
Well, it's funny, yeah, of all the writers you could play, like there's not a lot of like cool guys smoking cigarettes in a bar, getting into a fist fight and eating your novel, like there's not a lot of moments like that. And Flannery herself said that no one was ever going to do a biography of her because there would be nothing to write about. And frankly, we struggled with that initially. I part of why I brought my dad this idea was I was like, don't have an idea. Like, I know I want to play this character. I have no idea what snapshot of her life is interesting. Like, if we do her at Iato, we might as well just go off on a journey with the Fitzgeralds. Like, it's like you find Flannery would be a better side character in someone else's movie than a character in her own movie. If you dive deeply into any of the other characters in this movie, you would find a larger story that could have been told. Like, Phil's character, Robert Lowell, like there would be an amazing story you could tell about him, or even Regina, there's like, Flannery is kind of the boringest, but it opened up this door to make a movie about the imagination. And her life was simple and confined and stuck, like the lives of so many women in that era and time period, but also compounded by her disease. And yeah, I feel like it. Yes, I'm done speaking.
Yeah. Was there a process to finding her voice and rhythm?
Oh, yeah. I worked with this amazing voice coach, Kate Wilson, that I've been working with for ages, who I just love and admire. And she's some voice coaches really try to like break you down and build you up, and she just builds you up and makes you feel better. But so I worked with her on kind of getting the dialect right, and but really the biggest advantage was that Flannery has a recording of her doing A Good Man Is Hard to Find. And so we really worked from that, but then tried to make her a little bit more legible because, it's not fun watching a movie being like, what are they saying? What are they saying? Even though so many people watch movies these days with the subtitles on, even when it's in English, but I don't want people doing that. I think that's crazy. So we tried to kind of make it more comprehensible because Flannery herself was notoriously difficult to understand.
It was cool because you can find, like, I can tell the rhythm there that you're hitting, and it's also fun, like, again, when you're switching characters, because I would imagine, we were talking about the DNA earlier, but you would have had to have found, I guess, a different rhythm every single time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a similar rhythm. Basically, I just played with the accent and whether or not to make it stronger or weaker. I essentially the only changes that I made with the different characters was kind of hicking it up and unhicking it. For
Yes, I do
lack
know,
of
actually. Yeah, I've had to get rid of my rats and my eyes and everything, yeah, through the years. So it's
Oh, I wish you'd left your rats and eyes. I love those rats and eyes.
what is it? I was of course looking for the threads when they're not even meant to be there, but there's the quote, I have to write to discover. I have to write to discover what I'm doing, and I don't know what I think till I see what I say. And I thought, well, that's songwriting right there. That's half the time of a song, right?
Totally. I mean, I think I was really musically inspired by studying her as a writer. And even the title for my new album coming out came from working on this movie. So yeah, I think it is songwriting. I mean, you have to write to see what you've said, and then once you do, you have to say it all over again. And it sounds like a chorus to
Put a
me.
melody to it and stamp it out.
Yeah.
I seriously, I've obviously we've talked about music a lot of the times, so we've talked about acting a little bit of the time, and I enjoy both sides of your worlds there. This is something like the depths that you went to in your acting, I feel like is a new watermark that I've seen from you, and it was so good. And
Thank you.
these types of movies, because I feel like, I don't know, maybe because I'm looking for them, maybe because it's post strike and everything else, that there's this opportunity for weird indie to sort of creep back up in those ways. From your point of view, inside the industry, is that perception feel accurate to you?
I feel like the industry, technology has done this thing where, the generations are getting so much shorter. And what I mean by that is like movements and shifts of vibe and tone seem to be happening in more like 3 to 5 year chunks and less 10 to 30 year chunks. And I think that I have no idea what's happening. I Between the pandemic and the strike and the rise of streaming and the kind of reckoning of streaming at the same time, I have no idea. I just wouldn't begin to be able to make any predictions. I hope that there's a space for independent film. I hope people go back to the theater. I hope that the people who can choose to invest in unique original material and not just IP and canonical reboots. I hope. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, as if we keep getting more movies like this, I'm going to be in heaven. So it's please, please keep making more. Yeah.
I'll do my very best.
It's all up to you. And of course, the album coming out too. That interview is coming later this month. You already know how I feel about that. I'm looking forward to. Are you going to have time to tour at all this year?
Not this year because we're shooting Stranger Things out here in Atlanta.
Oh,
So
so I've heard.
the only thing I'm looking forward to Stranger Things ending is being able to tour my record. Other than that, it's a total heartbreak. But yeah. So I think I do a couple shows, one in Atlanta, two in Nashville, for as release shows. But that's it.
All right, Nashville's not far from me. Hopefully, I'll see that. So
Maybe you
yeah.
can come. That'd be awesome.
I'll be down there. Wildcat is a beautiful movie. Congrats on it again, and congrats
Thank
to the
you.
whole crew. I didn't even compliment Steve Zahn. It was great seeing him in there, and
Oh God, isn't he just delicious?
he was so good. And you like him even when you don't. Every single time, you
I
know.
know, I know, I know. Even as an unlikable character, he's like, but that guy's kind of fun to hang out with, huh? It's kind of great.
It's always so great talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Have a good time.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week, new one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All three of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.